Snow drifted across Brooklyn like soft feathers falling from a wounded sky. Inside a cramped third-floor walk-up, Evelyn Brooks tried to keep her hands from shaking as she stirred a pot of cheap tomato soup. Her old iPhone, screen cracked in two corners, played faint Christmas music, the kind that usually calmed her nerves. Not tonight, not with the baby inside her, pressing painfully against her ribs, and her 5-month-old daughter crying in the next room. "Just hold on, sweetheart. Mommy's here," she whispered, rubbing her belly as another ache shot through her back. The doctor had warned her about stress, but stress had become her entire life since marrying Colton Hayes. The apartment door slammed open. Colton stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and expensive cologne, the kind he never wore for her. Snow clung to his designer coat, and his eyes held the wild, frantic energy she'd come to fear. "You're late," Evelyn murmured, careful, gentle, the way one speaks to a cornered animal. Colton scoffed. "I had work. Unlike you." Work. She'd seen the lipstick stain on his shirt yesterday. She'd ignored it. She always ignored it. She couldn't afford to lose him, not with rent overdue and no one else to depend on. But tonight, something in her chest cracked open. "I know about Mara," she whispered. His head jerked up. "What did you say?" "I know you've been seeing her. I know you weren't at the office. Colton, please." The slap came fast. Her cheek burned as she stumbled, gripping the counter to stay upright. The unborn child kicked sharply, as if startled. In the bedroom, her infant daughter wailed louder. "You don't talk to me like that," Colton snarled. "You should be grateful I even keep you here." Tears blurred her vision, but she stood straighter. "I'm pregnant. And I have a baby in the next room. Don't do this." "Pregnant," he mocked. "You think that matters to me? You think you matter?" Then he shoved her. Her back struck the doorframe. Pain rippled through her abdomen. Evelyn gasped, clutching her belly, terrified something had gone wrong. She rushed to the crib, scooped up her crying daughter, and staggered toward the front door. "You're not going anywhere," Colton growled. But she was. Barefoot, coatless, carrying her baby and her unborn child's fragile heartbeat, Evelyn fled into the icy Christmas wind. Snow swallowed her cries as she stumbled down the steps and onto the deserted street, breath clouding in white puffs. Her body trembled violently from cold and terror. She didn't know where to go. She had no money, no family, no safety. Her vision blurred as she sank to the curb, clutching her daughter to her chest. "Someone, please." Across the street, beneath a flickering street lamp, a tall, older man watched with haunted eyes, his breath catching as he recognized the face he had searched for over 20 long years. He stepped forward. Evelyn, and everything she thought she knew about her life, was about to shatter. Snow whipped sideways along the empty Brooklyn street, turning the world into a blur of white as Evelyn Brooks crouched on the curb, clutching her infant daughter against her trembling chest. Her breath came out in ragged bursts, and pain pulsed deep in her abdomen, sharp, warning, dangerous. Every instinct told her she should get up, keep moving, find warmth, but her body refused. Her legs felt carved from ice, her arms numb, her heartbeat thudding unevenly in her ears. A car passed, its headlights sweeping over her without slowing. Another blur of indifference in a city that had no mercy for people like her. Evelyn swallowed hard, blinking against the snow that stung her eyes. She pressed her cheek against her daughter's tiny hat for courage. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm trying, I'm really trying." That was when she heard footsteps, slow, steady, deliberate, the sound of someone who wasn't hurrying through the storm but moving with purpose. Evelyn stiffened. Fear shot through her spine. What if Colton had followed her? What if he was about to drag her back inside, to finish what he started? She turned her head just enough to see a tall silhouette standing beneath the flickering street lamp. For a moment she thought she was hallucinating. The man wasn't moving. He stood like a statue carved from shadow and snow, the wind tugging at the collar of his long dark coat. Then he stepped forward. The snow around him seemed to bend to his presence. He walked with the controlled weight of someone trained to measure danger, someone who had spent a lifetime stepping into war zones instead of running from them. Even from a distance, Evelyn felt her lungs tighten with instinctive trust and instinctive fear at the same time. "Evelyn," he called softly. Her heart lurched. No stranger should know her name. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. The pain in her abdomen sharpened again, stealing her breath. Her daughter whimpered loudly, the sound thin and distressed. The man quickened his pace. "Please don't," Evelyn choked out, shielding her child. I don't have anything worth taking." He stopped 3 feet away, hands visible, palms open, not threatening, not approaching without permission. His breath fogged in the air as he studied her face with an expression she didn't understand. It wasn't pity. It wasn't curiosity. It was something heavier, older, something that made her chest ache without knowing why. "Evelyn," he repeated, voice breaking around the edges. "I've been searching for you for years." Her throat closed. "Who are you?" The man exhaled shakily, snow gathering on his graying beard. "My name is Franklin Ward." The name meant nothing to her, but the look in his eyes did. It was the look of someone seeing a ghost they had been mourning while still alive. "I knew your mother," he said gently. "I knew her better than anyone, and I've carried the weight of losing her every day since." Evelyn froze. A strange, cold numbness crept up her spine. "My mother died when I was a baby. No one knew her. No one came for me." "That wasn't supposed to happen," Franklin whispered. "I was kept away, forced away, but I never stopped looking. And tonight, God help me, I was walking home when I saw a face I've only seen in my memories of her." He knelt slowly, eye level with her, voice steadier now. "Evelyn, I'm your grandfather." The world seemed to tilt. Her ears rang, her vision dimmed, and the last thing she saw before darkness rushed in was Franklin Ward reaching out, not to grab, not to force, but to catch her gently as she collapsed forward, still clutching her baby. And somewhere up the block, a shadow watched them both, someone who wasn't supposed to know Evelyn's location at all. Warmth returned to Evelyn Brooks in slow fragments, not all at once, but like pieces of a broken window being set back into place. She felt heat on her face, softness beneath her body, and the faint rhythmic beeping of a machine nearby. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The last thing she remembered was the snow, her baby crying, and the stranger Franklin Ward claiming to be her grandfather. Her eyes fluttered open. The room wasn't a hospital, but it was cleaner, brighter, and far more expensive than any place she had ever been. A soft leather couch, a glass coffee table, a fireplace flickering with golden light, thick curtains drawn against the winter night. Everything felt warm and safe, too safe for someone like her. She bolted upright. Her daughter wasn't in her arms anymore. Before panic could explode in her chest, she heard a soft coo coming from a bassinet beside the couch. She scrambled out of the blankets and rushed over. Her baby lay bundled in a clean pink blanket, cheeks rosy, breathing peacefully. Relief hit so hard her knees nearly buckled. "You're awake." Evelyn turned sharply. Franklin Ward stood in the doorway, holding a steaming mug of tea. Without his long coat and the shadows of the snowstorm, he looked older but also gentler. A man who carried too many years of grief on his shoulders. "Where am I?" she asked, voice hoarse. "My apartment," he said. "A safe place. It's on the edge of Brooklyn Heights. No one can reach you here." She swallowed. "You shouldn't have brought me. He'll come looking." "Good," Franklin said quietly. "Let him. I've faced worse men than your husband." The casual certainty in his tone sent a strange chill through her. She looked closer at him, his straight posture, his steady gaze, the faint scars on his hands. He wasn't a normal old man. She sensed that instinctively. "You said you knew my mother," Evelyn whispered. "You said you were my grandfather." Pain flickered in Franklin's eyes. He set the tea down and walked to the window, staring out at the snow-covered street below. "I lost your mother before I ever had the chance to protect her," he said. "And I've lived with that failure for 20 years. Evelyn's heart tightened. "She died in a house fire." "I read the report." Franklin shook his head. "Not a fire, a cover-up." The room tilted slightly. "What?" "Your mother was running," he said. "Running from people who wanted information she carried. I tried to get to her, but I was pulled into a classified assignment overseas. By the time I disobeyed orders and came back, she was gone." Evelyn felt her breath catch. "I was told no family survived." "That was the lie meant to hide you," Franklin said. "Someone wanted you forgotten, erased, so they buried the truth with her." His voice dropped. "I only discovered your adoption records 2 years ago. They were sealed under a false name. I've been searching ever since." It was too much, too fast. Her chest tightened, fear rising like a tide. "Why? Why would anyone care about me?" Franklin turned then, eyes sharp with old battle-worn knowledge. Because, he said slowly, someone out there still wants what your mother died protecting, and they may already know you're alive. A cold tremor ran through Evelyn. As if the universe wanted to confirm his words, the apartment lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the security alarm beeped softly. A warning. Franklin's jaw tightened. They found us faster than I expected. And he reached for the weapon she hadn't noticed. He kept hidden under the coat he'd just put on. The soft alarm continued its steady beeping, each pulse echoing through the warm apartment like a countdown. Evelyn froze, her hand instinctively moving to the bassinet where her baby slept. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. Franklin Ward, calm in a way only men forged by war could be, stepped toward the control panel beside the front door. "It might just be the wind," Evelyn whispered, though she didn't believe it. New York winds didn't trip motion sensors on the third floor of a secured building. "No," Franklin murmured. Someone crossed the perimeter. He tapped a button. The small screen beside the panel blinked on, showing a grainy hallway feed. A shadow hovered just outside the camera's range. Not a shape, not a face, just the outline of someone waiting. Her blood ran cold. Franklin's jaw tightened. "They're testing the cameras, seeing whether anyone reacts." "Who are they?" Evelyn asked, voice barely audible. "People who should have been ghosts by now," he said. "People who were after your mother." He didn't turn as he spoke, but she could hear the weight of failure in his voice. Evelyn pressed her hand against her stomach as a sharp cramp hit. "Franklin, I can't go through this. Not now. Colton might be looking for me too. If these people find me—" "They won't," he cut in gently. "I won't lose another generation of my family." Before she could respond, the apartment intercom buzzed sharply. Bzzz, a jolt through the quiet. Franklin raised a hand, warning her not to move. He pressed the intercom button. A distorted male voice crackled through the speaker. "Delivery. Open up." "We didn't order anything," Franklin replied evenly. A pause. Too long to be normal. Then, "Open the door, Mr. Ward." Every muscle in Evelyn's body tensed. "How do they know your name?" The intercom clicked off. Franklin gently ushered Evelyn toward the corner behind the couch. "Stay low. Stay quiet. If something happens, take the emergency exit through the laundry room. The stairwell leads to a back alley." He hesitated. "There's a safe house 1 block east, Suite 3B. Someone there knows you're coming." "Someone?" she echoed. "Who?" But Franklin didn't answer. He moved to the kitchen counter and pulled open a drawer. Evelyn expected to see utensils. Instead, he withdrew a matte black pistol, the kind used by special forces. He checked the chamber with practiced precision. "Franklin, what kind of life did you live?" she whispered. "The kind that catches up," he said. The doorknob rattled. Evelyn's breath hitched. Her daughter whimpered softly in the bassinet. She lifted the baby quickly, cradling her tight, praying the tiny sound didn't give them away. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The deadly kind. Franklin motioned with 2 fingers. "Back up." He approached the door slowly, weapon raised. A soft metallic click echoed from the hallway. Someone was picking the lock. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. She tightened her grip around her daughter and positioned herself behind the couch, ready to run if Franklin told her to. The lock clicked again, louder this time. Then the door creaked open an inch. Franklin aimed. "Don't move," he barked. A hand appeared first, gloved, cautious. Then a face leaned into view. Not Colton, not a stranger. A young woman, pale, shaking, eyes wide with terror. "Please," she gasped. "You don't know me, but he's coming. You have to get her out of here, right now." Franklin's eyes narrowed. "Who's coming?" She swallowed hard. "Colton Hayes." Evelyn felt the world tilt. But the woman kept speaking, because the real threat wasn't Colton at all. It was who he had brought with him. For a full second, no one breathed. The pale young woman stood trembling in the doorway, snow melting on her lashes, chest rising in panicked bursts. Franklin Ward didn't lower his weapon. Evelyn Brooks clutched her daughter closer, her pulse thunderous in her ears. The woman swallowed hard. "My name is Tessa. I worked with Colton, but I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because he's not the man you think he is." Franklin's voice stayed calm, but edged with steel. "We're aware he's dangerous." "No," Tessa whispered. "You don't understand. He's not coming alone." That sentence cracked through the room like ice breaking on a lake. Franklin stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Who is with him? Tessa wrung her hands, shaking. 2 men. Men he owes money to. He told them Evelyn stole from him. He told them they could take whatever they needed from her if she didn't cooperate. Evelyn's stomach dropped. He said, "What?" He told them you're hiding something valuable, Tessa said, breath hitching. Medical records. Insurance information. Something he could sell. I heard the whole thing. Then he said, her voice shook. He said he didn't care what they did to you as long as they brought him the files. A cold, sick feeling spread through Evelyn's chest. Colton didn't just want control. He wanted to use their child's medical data to pay off debts. Franklin processed this quickly, professionally, one hand steady on the gun, the other adjusting the security panel. They're still outside? Tessa nodded. They're watching the exits. I overheard them say they'd break down the door if they had to. Evelyn felt her throat close. Why did you come here? Why warn us? Tessa looked at her with raw regret in her eyes. Because I believed him when he said you were unstable. When he said you were dangerous. I helped him hide things from you at work. I let him use my phone to message those men. But tonight, I saw what he plans to do. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen. Franklin's eyes flicked to Evelyn. We're leaving. Now. He grabbed a backpack from the closet, already packed with medical supplies, blankets, and something metallic she couldn't identify. Tessa's breath quickened. You can't go through the hall. They'll see you. We're not, Franklin said. He crossed the room and pressed a hidden latch behind a bookshelf. A soft mechanical click echoed. A narrow panel slid open, revealing a dark passageway descending between the building walls. Evelyn stared. What is that? A maintenance shaft, Franklin said. From when this building belonged to a government contractor, most tenants don't know it exists. Tessa blinked. How do you know? Franklin didn't answer. He simply looked at Evelyn. Take the baby. Stay behind me. Move fast. Fear pounded through her, but so did something else, an instinctual trust she couldn't explain. She tucked her daughter inside her coat and stepped close behind him. Tessa grabbed Evelyn's wrist suddenly. Wait. Evelyn turned. I'm coming with you, Tessa said, eyes fierce for the first time. Colton thinks I'm still on his side. If he catches me here, I'm dead. Franklin hesitated, but only for a second. Then he nodded. Fine, but stay silent. The 3 of them slipped into the narrow darkness. The panel slid shut behind them, plunging them into shadows lit only by Franklin's small tactical flashlight. Above them, boots thundered into the apartment. A man shouted, "Search everywhere." They're here. Evelyn's heart lurched. But deeper in the shaft, a faint metallic clank echoed, as if someone else was already waiting inside the walls. The maintenance shaft swallowed them whole, its narrow metal walls closing in like the ribs of some forgotten beast. The air was colder here, sharp and metallic, carrying the faint scent of rust and dust, ancient, undisturbed until now. Franklin Ward moved first, one hand gripping a thin tactical flashlight, the other hovering protectively near his concealed weapon. Behind him, Evelyn Brooks followed with her baby tucked inside her coat, her breaths short and uneven. Tessa trailed last, wiping terrified tears from her cheeks. A loud crash echoed from above, furniture being overturned. They're tearing apart the apartment, Tessa whispered. Franklin didn't slow. They won't find anything. Not yet. But Evelyn noticed something in his voice, not fear, but calculation. He was thinking like a man who'd escaped worse situations, who carried maps of danger etched into the back of his mind. The shaft sloped downward sharply. Evelyn nearly slipped, her hand scraping metal as she steadied herself. Pain radiated up her wrist. The baby stirred and whimpered. Shh. Mommy's here, Evelyn whispered, holding her tighter. Franklin glanced back. You okay? She nodded even though she wasn't. Emotions swelled in her chest, fear, adrenaline, and something deeper. Gratitude, trust, but also confusion. Who was this man? And why did her life suddenly feel like it belonged in someone else's story? Another metallic clank echoed through the walls. Not from above. Not from behind. From ahead? Franklin stopped instantly, lifted his fist, a silent command. Everyone froze. The sound came again, a soft, dragging scrape, like someone or something shifting in the darkness. Tessa's breath caught. Franklin, is someone in here? He didn't answer. He passed Evelyn the flashlight, then reached into the waistband of his coat, pulling out a compact sidearm with movements frighteningly smooth for a man his age. "I thought you said no one knew about this passage," Evelyn whispered. "I said most tenants didn't," Franklin murmured. "I never said it was unused." Her stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said quietly, "we're not the only ones who know ghosts live inside this building." Before she could respond, a shadow flickered across the narrow corridor ahead. Franklin lifted the gun. "Show yourself." Silence. Then, a voice, hoarse, low, familiar. "Don't shoot." Evelyn's heart stopped. She knew that voice. She hated that voice. "Colton." Tessa gasped, stumbling backward into the wall. "No, no, he followed us how?" Colton stepped into the thin beam of the flashlight, his face half lit, half monster. His hair was soaked from the snow, his shirt torn, his expression twisted with desperation and rage. "You think you can run from me?" he snarled, staring directly at Evelyn. "You think you can take what's mine?" Franklin moved faster than she thought possible, positioning himself between Colton and the women. "You're not going any closer." Colton laughed, breath steaming in the cold air. "Old man, you don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh, I do," Franklin said. "A coward who hides behind hired criminals and hurts women because he's too weak to stand like a man." The words hit Colton like a strike. His eyes darkened. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Franklin growled. "Step back." Colton didn't step back. He stepped forward. Then, from somewhere deeper in the shaft, another voice echoed. Not Colton's. Not Franklin's. A smooth, calm baritone. "Everyone stay where you are." Someone else emerged from the darkness. A tall figure in a black coat. A familiar face Evelyn had seen once years ago before her life fell apart. Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Tech. Her breath caught, and for the first time, Colton looked genuinely afraid. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The maintenance shaft, narrow, suffocating, vibrating with tension, seemed to shrink as Alexander Reed stepped into the thin beam of Evelyn's flashlight. His presence shifted the air. Calm, controlled, calculated. He looked nothing like a man who belonged in the walls of a Brooklyn Heights building. His black wool coat was dusted with snow, his expression unreadable, his dark eyes locked on Colton Hayes with a quiet intensity that made even Franklin Ward stiffen. Colton's bravado cracked. "What the hell are you doing here?" Alexander didn't answer him. Instead, he turned to Evelyn. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you're safe now." Her heart lurched at the familiarity in his tone. She had met him only once years ago, briefly, during a job fair at a community college. He had spoken to her for less than 2 minutes, and yet his face had stayed with her in a way she could never explain. A face she had thought belonged to a stranger. But the way he said her name now, he was no stranger. Franklin kept his gun raised. "Alexander, I didn't expect you this early." "Early?" Evelyn echoed, stunned. "You two know each other?" Alexander gave a small nod. "Your grandfather contacted me the moment he realized you were in danger." Her breath caught. "But how do you know who I am?" Alexander's gaze didn't waver. "Because your grandfather saved my life once, and I made him a promise I'd repay that debt if he ever asked." His eyes softened. Tonight, he finally did. Before Evelyn could respond, Colton lunged forward, rage twisting his features. "This is insane. She's my wife. You can't just take her." Franklin shifted, blocking him. "She stopped being yours the moment you laid a hand on her." Colton roared. "You have no idea what's going on. Those men are going to." "We know," Alexander cut in, tone cool. "We intercepted them outside. They won't be joining us." That sentence landed like a silent explosion. Tessa stared at him, stunned. "What did you do?" Alexander didn't blink. "Handled it. Handled it." The words sent chills through Evelyn, not of fear, but something else. Something like awe. Colton backed up a step, suddenly outnumbered, outpowered, stripped of his smug confidence. "You can't do this. I'll call the police. I'll tell them you kidnapped my wife." "You already tried," Alexander replied calmly. "Dispatch flagged you for filing a fraudulent domestic report. You're on their radar now." Colton's face drained of color. Franklin lowered his voice. "It's over, son. Stop fighting." But Colton snarled, desperate. "No, she's mine. She and that kid." Evelyn stepped forward, anger surging like fire through her veins. That child isn't yours, and neither am I. Her words struck deeper than any blow. For the first time, Colton looked genuinely lost, like he didn't know how he had arrived at this moment, how he had destroyed everything he claimed to care about. Then, something shifted in his expression. Not remorse. Recognition. His gaze darted between Franklin and Alexander, connecting dots too late. "This wasn't random," Colton whispered. "You two, you planned this." Franklin's voice turned cold. "We planned to protect Evelyn. You planned to exploit her." Colton lunged again, reckless and wild. But Alexander moved first. He stepped forward, not violently, not hurriedly, but with precise, effortless strength. He intercepted Colton's arm, twisted, and pinned him against the wall in one fluid motion. Colton gasped in pain, caught off guard by the sheer power behind the calm exterior. Alexander leaned close, voice quiet enough only Colton could hear. "You ever touch her again, and you won't walk away next time." Colton trembled. Evelyn watched, breathless, realizing this moment was the first time she had ever seen someone stand between her and danger. But before anyone could speak again, a deafening bang echoed through the shaft. Not from their group. From behind them, someone else had entered the passage. And this time, they weren't here to warn. The explosion of sound ripped through the metal shaft, like thunder trapped in a cage. Evelyn screamed and instinctively curled her body around her baby. Franklin Ward shoved her behind a support beam, shielding her with his own frame. Alexander Reed spun toward the noise, his grip tightening on Colton's arm until Colton winced and froze. Another sound followed, a metallic scrape, steady and intentional. Whoever was behind them wasn't panicking, they were advancing. Franklin hissed, "Move forward, now." Alexander released Colton just long enough to wrench him ahead like a prisoner. Tessa stumbled after them, trembling violently. Evelyn held her daughter tight as they hurried deeper between the walls, breath fogging in the frigid, stale air. The maintenance shaft widened slightly, enough for Franklin to maneuver beside Evelyn. He clicked off his flashlight, plunging them into darkness. "Why are you turning it off?" she whispered. "Light makes us targets," Franklin murmured. "Sound tells us enough." As if on cue, a new noise echoed behind them, footsteps, slow and deliberate, not running, not rushing, hunting. Evelyn's heart hammered. "Who is that?" "Someone who's been after your mother's files longer than Colton's debts existed," Franklin said quietly. "Someone who shouldn't know this passageway is here." Alexander moved like he'd been trained for this, guiding Evelyn with one hand while keeping Colton pinned against the wall with the other. His voice was steady, barely above a whisper. "The tunnel branches in 30 feet. We take the left. It leads under the old boiler room. Safer exit." Colton barked a bitter laugh. "Oh, that's great. 2 military dinosaurs and a tech messiah think they can outsmart." Alexander slammed him against the wall again, silencing him. Tessa whispered, "Please stop provoking them. You're going to get us all killed." But the footsteps behind them grew louder. Whoever followed them was accelerating. Franklin broke into a low, controlled jog. "Pick up the pace." The baby began to fuss, sensing Evelyn's terror. Evelyn's arms shook as she bounced her gently, whispering frantic comfort through trembling lips. Then a voice called out from the darkness behind them. A man's voice, calm, confident, cold. "Evelyn, you can't hide forever." Evelyn froze mid-step. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't recognize the voice, but Franklin did. His curse echoed softly. "I knew it. He's alive." Alexander stiffened beside her. "It's him?" "Yes," Franklin growled. "The one your mother feared most." The man kept speaking, voice echoing through the shaft like a nightmare with a heartbeat. "You have something that belongs to me, and I intend to finish what I started 20 years ago." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "What is he talking about? I don't have anything." "You do," Franklin said. "You just don't know it." They reached the fork in the passage. Franklin turned left, motioning them through first. But just as Evelyn passed the threshold, another deafening bang erupted from the opposite side of the fork. Someone else was coming from the left. Trapped. Franklin grabbed Evelyn and pushed her back into Alexander's arms. "Keep moving. I'll hold him off." "No," Evelyn cried. "Franklin, you can't fight him alone." But Franklin's expression held decades of ghosts, of battles survived and mistakes carried like scars. This is the fight I should have faced 20 years ago. Go. Alexander pulled Evelyn forward as heavy footsteps pounded from both directions. Tessa screamed. Colton slipped in panic, scrambling behind Alexander. The man's voice rose, triumphant and near. You can't run from blood, Evelyn, Franklin shouted back, but she can run from you. The tunnel shook with the force of 3 bodies colliding. And behind Evelyn, the darkness erupted into a brutal fight she wasn't meant to see but couldn't outrun forever. The tunnel shook with violent echoes, grunts, metal clashing, the thud of bodies hitting steel. Franklin Ward was fighting behind them, but Evelyn Brooks couldn't look back. Alexander Reed gripped her wrist firmly, guiding her through the narrowing passage as Tessa cried and stumbled behind them. Colton, panicked and gasping, crawled on hands and knees, no trace of his usual arrogance left. The baby in Evelyn's arms whimpered, sensing danger. Evelyn whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart, just a little farther," even though her own heart felt like it was breaking through her chest. Ahead, faint light seeped through a slotted vent, orange, flickering. "The boiler room," Alexander murmured. "We need to get through before—" A roar echoed behind them. A man's roar, not Franklin's. Evelyn froze. "Franklin?" No answer. Just another brutal collision, then silence so sudden it crushed the air out of her lungs. Alexander squeezed her hand. "We keep moving." "But he might be." "He won't die easily," Alexander said, voice low but steady. "Trust me." He led her to the vent and kicked it out with one swift, controlled strike. The grate clattered onto the concrete floor below. Heat blasted their faces. The boiler room was alive with industrial hums and metal pipes glowing from steam pressure. Alexander jumped down first, landing in a crouch. "Hand me the baby." Evelyn hesitated, 1 second, just one, but the desperation in his eyes wasn't for himself, it was for her child. She lowered the baby carefully, and Alexander caught her with surprising gentleness before helping Evelyn climb down. Tessa followed shakily. Colton dropped down last, landing awkwardly with a grunt. The room was huge old brick walls stained with years of heat, pipes hissing, shadows swaying like restless ghosts. There were 2 exits, a steel door to the service hallway and a ladder leading to another vent. Alexander scanned the room. "We take the service door. If we reach the courtyard—" He stopped. Evelyn followed his gaze and felt her stomach flip. A man stood in the corner, half hidden by shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. His eyes gleamed like polished steel. The same voice that haunted the tunnels spoke. "You run well, Evelyn," Tessa screamed. Colton scrambled behind pipes like a terrified animal. Alexander stepped in front of Evelyn, shielding her and the baby. "You won't touch her." The man smiled faintly. "Alexander Reed. Loyal, as always, just like your father." Evelyn's breath caught. "You know his family?" "I know much more than that," the man replied. "Your mother died protecting something she never understood. A file, a code, a key, and you, Evelyn." His eyes traveled to her belly. "You carry the last piece." "What piece?" she demanded. He tilted his head. "Your DNA." Her skin prickled. "My, what?" He stepped closer, voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Your grandfather wasn't just a soldier. He led the operation that destroyed my network. I swore that his bloodline would never escape me again." He paused, lips curling. "I failed with your mother. I won't fail with you." Alexander's voice dropped to ice. "You're not walking out of this room." "Oh?" the man said softly. "And who will stop me? You?" "No," came a hoarse voice from above. Everyone looked up. On the catwalk above the boiler tanks, Franklin Ward stood, bloody, bruised, but unbroken. And in his hand was a tactical light, aimed directly at the man below. The man's jaw tightened. "Ward." Franklin's voice was a gravel-filled growl. "Get away from my granddaughter." Then he kicked something off the railing, a metal valve wrench, sending sparks flying as it fell. And the boiler room erupted in alarms. The boiler room erupted into chaos. Red alarms flashed, bathing the cavernous space in pulsing light. Steam burst from overhead pipes, filling the air with a hiss that drowned out breathing, shouting, "Everything!" Evelyn Brooks tightened her hold on her baby as Alexander pulled her backward toward cover behind a thick concrete column. Franklin Ward remained on the catwalk, gripping the railing with one bloodied hand, his other holding a tactical flashlight the size of a baton. The villain below his face, sharpened by shadows and fury, watched him like a predator, gauging its wounded but still dangerous rival. "You think setting off the emergency release will stop me?" the man shouted over the alarms. Franklin smirked, a razor-thin smile. "Not stop, distract." He slammed his foot into another valve lever. Steam exploded downward, spraying like a white curtain between the man and Evelyn's group. The villain leapt back, cursing, coat whipping behind him. Alexander seized the opening. "We need to move now." But Evelyn's legs didn't obey. Something in her belly twisted sharply, worse than before, deeper, like a warning clawing its way through her organs. "Alexander, something's wrong," she gasped. He spun toward her instantly. "Is it the baby?" She nodded, teeth clenched. "It's something's happening, I don't know." Tessa rushed to her side. "She's in preterm labor. The stress this room, it's too much." "No," Evelyn whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Not now, please." But another contraction hit like a knife. She collapsed to her knees, barely catching herself before she hit the floor. Her baby cried from the sudden jolt, adding a new layer of panic to the already suffocating air. Colton, still crouched behind a boiler tank, peeked out with wide, terrified eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen." "I never wanted." Alexander rounded on him. "Shut your mouth. You did this." Colton's jaw snapped shut, fear choking him silent. The villain's voice cut through the alarms again, closer now despite the steam barrier. "She's weakening. She won't get far. Give her to me, Ward." Franklin's reply was a roar, primal and unfiltered. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." Something metallic clattered. A gun. The man had drawn a weapon. Franklin ducked just as a shot cracked through the room, sparking off the railing behind him. Evelyn screamed. Alexander shielded her with his body. Tessa dove behind a toolbox. Colton scrambled so fast his shoes slipped on the wet floor. "Franklin," Evelyn cried. "I'm fine," he shouted back, but even from below, she could hear the strain in his voice. Alexander looked at the far exit door, 20 feet away. "We can make it if we time the steam bursts." "Evelyn, can you stand?" Another sharp contraction twisted through her. She clenched her teeth. I'll try." He slipped an arm under her shoulders, lifting her gently but urgently. Her legs wobbled, barely holding. The villain fired again. The bullet struck a metal tank, ricocheting dangerously close. Franklin retaliated not with bullets, but with strategy. He kicked loose a dangling chain, sending a suspended maintenance platform swinging hard into the villain's line of attack. The impact forced the man sideways, stopping him mid-step. "Move," Franklin ordered. Alexander pulled Evelyn toward the door, guiding her around bursts of steam that hissed like serpents ready to strike. Tessa followed, gripping Evelyn's backpack. Even Colton, useless as he was, stumbled behind them. But as they reached the exit, a heavy clang sounded. The door handle rattling from the outside. Someone else was trying to get in. Tessa whispered, horrified. "How many of them are there?" Alexander positioned himself between Evelyn and the door. "Whoever it is, they're not getting through." A beat of silence. Then the door creaked open an inch. A familiar voice spoke. "Evelyn, it's me. Open the door." It wasn't Franklin. It wasn't the villain. It was her ex-best friend, Claire. The one who vanished from her life years ago without a word. And she wasn't alone. The boiler room's alarms shrieked through the air, steam exploding in thick white bursts, but Evelyn Brooks heard only one thing. Claire's voice. A voice she once trusted more than her own. "Evelyn, open the door," Claire called, breathless but calm, like she was dropping by for coffee instead of stepping into the aftermath of a war. Alexander Reed's body tensed. He positioned himself between Evelyn and the door, shielding her instinctively. "Don't answer," he warned. "Not until we know who she's with." But Evelyn couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Claire had been the one person she trusted during her first pregnancy, the one person who held her when her previous boyfriend abandoned her, the one person who mysteriously disappeared right before Evelyn met Colton. Claire shouldn't know where she was. Claire shouldn't even be here. Evelyn forced herself to speak. "Claire, how did you find me?" A beat. Then Claire's voice softened, too soft, too rehearsed. "I've been looking for you for years. Please, Eve, you're in danger. Let me help." Tessa grabbed Evelyn's arm. "Don't believe her. That tone, she's lying." "I'm not lying," Claire insisted from the other side. I'm here because Colton reached out. He said you ran off, that you were confused. Alexander yanked the door open 2 inches, just enough to see. Claire flinched, stepping back into the dim hallway, her blonde hair damp from snow, her coat ripped at the shoulder. Behind her stood 2 men, hard-eyed, alert, unmistakably dangerous. Not the same men who chased them earlier. Different ones. A new threat. Alexander's voice dropped to a lethal calm. Step back. Hands where I can see them. Claire obeyed, but very slowly. Too slowly. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Claire, why are you with them? Claire swallowed, eyes darting between Evelyn and the men. I had no choice. They found me days ago. They know about your mother. They know everything. I thought if I came alone, they'd kill me. It wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the truth. Franklin Ward, still bleeding on the catwalk, shouted down. Don't listen to her, Evelyn. Claire's been involved since the beginning. Claire's face crumpled. I didn't want them to hurt her, I swear. They said if I kept track of Evelyn for them, they'd leave me alone. Evelyn's pulse roared. You tracked me? I didn't have a choice, Claire cried. I tried to warn you so many times. The night you met Colton, yes, I disappeared. Because they took me. They forced me to connect him with you. I'm sorry, Eve. I'm so sorry. Evelyn staggered, gripping the boiler tank for balance. Claire. Her best friend. The only person she trusted. The one who delivered her right into Colton's hands. So, Alexander said coldly, you were the bait. Claire sobbed. I didn't know Colton would turn into this. I thought he'd keep her safe. They promised. Franklin roared from above. They used you. Then used him. Then came for her. You were just another pawn. The villain in the shadows snarled. Enough sentiment. The 2 men behind Claire reached for their weapons. Alexander slammed the door shut fast, locking it with his shoulder. A bullet exploded through the steel, inches from his head. Move, he shouted. The group scattered behind cover. Steam shot from pipes as bullets punctured metal. The baby cried louder. Evelyn pressed her forehead against her daughter's, whispering promises she didn't know she could keep. Tessa screamed, they're coming through. The door buckled. Once, twice. Franklin shouted from the catwalk, get Evelyn out. Alexander, you know the route. Alexander's eyes locked onto Evelyn's. Determined. Fearless. Protective. There's one way left, he said. He grabbed the wheel of the emergency pressure valve, the one controlling the entire boiler system. Tessa gasped. No, if you open that. I know, Alexander said. He spun the valve. And the whole room erupted in a storm of scalding steam, fire alarms, and collapsing metal, cutting off Claire and the armed men completely. Heat engulfed the room the moment Alexander Reed spun the emergency valve. The boiler system roared in protest, releasing a violent rush of steam that shot upward in white-hot columns. Pipes screamed. Metal groaned. The alarms blared so loudly the floor vibrated beneath their feet. The door where Claire and the armed men were forcing their way in slammed shut from the sudden pressure shift. A screech of metal echoed as the hinges warped inward, sealing their enemies behind a wall of burning, blinding steam. Alexander, Evelyn cried, shielding her baby. You'll burn us alive. No, he shouted back, already guiding her toward the far side of the boiler room. The secondary pressure release will divert the heat away from us, but we have seconds, not minutes. Tessa scrambled after them, coughing through the thick, scorching air. Colton, dazed and choking, grabbed onto a nearby pipe and nearly burned his hand before jerking away with a howl. Move! Alexander barked. Franklin Ward leaped down from the catwalk despite his injuries and landed with a stumble but remained upright. Blood streaked down his temple, but determination lit his eyes like a flame that refused to die. The maintenance ladder, Franklin shouted over the chaos. It leads up to the service corridor. Alexander nodded. Go, I'll take the rear. But Franklin grabbed his arm. No, you take Evelyn. I'll cover from behind. Their eyes locked an unspoken recognition between soldiers, even if only one of them had ever worn a uniform. This isn't your burden to carry, Alexander said, voice tight. Yes, Franklin answered, it is. Steam blasted between them, forcing separation. The decision was made. Franklin took a defensive position near the molten-hot pipes, ready to take aim at anything that broke through the mist. His stance, injured, bleeding, refusing to fall, made Evelyn's chest ache with something she hadn't felt in years. Family. Alexander lifted the baby from her arms briefly, so she could climb the ladder. Evelyn's muscles trembled with exhaustion and pain, another contraction twisting through her like a blade. "Alexander," she whimpered, gripping the metal rungs. "I can't, my body." "Yes, you can," he said firmly, placing his hand against her back. "You're stronger than you think." Tessa pushed from below, practically lifting Evelyn's feet onto each rung. "Come on, we're almost there." Colton remained on the floor, wide-eyed, panicked. "Don't leave me," Franklin snarled. "Move your ass or I'll leave you for the men you owe money to." The threat worked, barely. Colton scrambled to the ladder, climbing behind Tessa with terrified gasps. At the top, a narrow service corridor stretched ahead, dim, lined with utility pipes, but mercifully cool compared to the inferno below. Alexander passed the baby up to Evelyn, then hauled himself through the opening with smooth, controlled power. Franklin climbed last, firing one final warning shot into the steam-filled room below as figures began to push against the warped door. "Go," Franklin commanded as he pulled himself into the corridor. "They'll break through any second." Tessa led the way, sprinting despite tears streaming down her face. "This corridor leads to the courtyard, right?" "Yes," Alexander said. "There's a service exit. If we make it outside, I have someone waiting in the car." "Who?" Evelyn asked through ragged breaths. "Someone who's been watching over you longer than you know." Before she could process that, a violent crash echoed behind them. The men in the boiler room had broken through. Footsteps thundered into the corridor. Franklin shouted, "Keep going." They ran. Evelyn clutched her baby, terror and contractions battling inside her. Another crash. Closer. Colton screamed. And then, a second figure appeared at the opposite end of the corridor. Claire. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with soot, and in her shaking hand, she held a gun. "Evelyn, don't make me do this." The narrow service corridor pulsed with fluorescent flickers, each one slicing the darkness like a trembling heartbeat. Evelyn Brooks froze mid-stride, her baby clutched tight against her chest, as Claire stepped into the center of the passage, gun raised, eyes glassy with fear, guilt, and something darker. Behind them, the sound of boots thundered closer. In front of them, Claire's shaking hands made the pistol's barrel wobble. They were trapped. "Claire," Evelyn whispered, breath ragged, "please, don't do this." Claire flinched as if struck. "I don't want to. God, Evelyn, you have to believe me. They forced me. Those men, they said, if I didn't bring you in, they'd die." Alexander Reed stepped in front of Evelyn, shielding both her and the baby with his body. His voice was low, calm, steady. "Claire, put the gun down. You're not a killer." "You don't know what I am," Claire cried, fingers whitening around the trigger. "I should have been the one she trusted. I should have been the one she leaned on. But you." She jabbed the gun toward Alexander. "You show up and suddenly you're her hero?" Evelyn blinked, stunned. "Claire, this isn't about me?" Tears spilled down Claire's cheeks. "It's always been about you. Everything falls apart around you, and you still get people who care. People who protect you. Me? I'm disposable." Franklin Ward stepped forward slowly, palms raised. "Claire, listen to me. You're scared. You made mistakes, but you're not beyond saving. Drop the gun, and I'll help you." Claire's laugh cracked like broken glass. "You? Help me? You think I didn't try to get out? They own me. And if I don't bring Evelyn back, they'll—" The pounding footsteps behind them grew louder. Claire's eyes widened in terror. "They're coming. Don't you get it? If I don't stop you now, they'll kill me." Evelyn took a small step forward, ignoring the sharp pain twisting through her belly. "Then come with us." Claire shook her head violently. "I can't," they said. Tessa suddenly lunged sideways, grabbing at a loose pipe on the wall. She ripped it free with a screech of metal and swung it toward Claire's wrist. The gun fired. The shot cracked through the corridor, hot and deafening. Evelyn screamed. The baby wailed. Sparks rained from a pipe overhead. The bullet didn't hit Evelyn. It didn't hit Alexander. It hit Colton. He collapsed with a gasp, clutching his shoulder as blood poured through his fingers. "You crazy witch." Claire staggered backward, horrified. "No, I didn't mean Colton. Alexander seized the moment. He rushed her. Claire shrieked, firing again wildly, but Alexander struck her wrist with surgical precision, sending the gun clattering across the floor. Franklin kicked it away instantly. Claire fell to her knees, sobbing. I didn't mean to, I swear I didn't. Behind them, voices shouted from the boiler room doorway. There. They're in the corridor. The enemies were almost upon them. Alexander grabbed Evelyn's hand. Run now. Franklin hauled Tessa forward. Even Colton, bleeding and pale, stumbled after them in terror. Claire remained kneeling, shaking, as the men she feared more than death rounded the corner behind her. She looked up at Evelyn one last time. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. Evelyn didn't have time to respond. Alexander shoved open a steel hatch at the end of the corridor. Cold night air blasted through, carrying snow and distant sirens. Go, he commanded. Evelyn leapt into the night, clutching her baby as the world spun toward freedom. But as Alexander closed the hatch behind them, a final gunshot exploded inside. Claire's scream pierced the darkness. And Evelyn realized not everyone would survive tonight's escape. The metal hatch slammed shut behind them, sealing off the gunshot, the screams, the heat of the boiler room. Evelyn Brooks stumbled into the frigid night air, nearly collapsing as snow swallowed her ankles. She clutched her baby tightly, breath clouding in the winter wind. Pain rippled through her abdomen, sharp, insistent. She wasn't sure how much longer her body could hold. Alexander Reed steadied her instantly. Stay with me, Evelyn. We're almost out. Almost out. But the courtyard they'd emerged into was massive, an industrial rear lot wedged behind 3 buildings, cluttered with dumpsters, utility vans, and shadows that flickered under pale security lights. Snow drifted down in thick, swirling flakes, muting the world but sharpening her fear. Tessa climbed out next, coughing hard, tears cutting streaks through the soot on her cheeks. Where's Franklin? He was right behind us. Evelyn's heart seized. She turned toward the hatch. Just as Franklin Ward crawled out, blood soaking through his shirt, one hand gripping the rim for support, his face was ashen, but he was alive. Grandpa! Evelyn choked out. Franklin waved her off weakly. I'm fine. He wasn't. Not even close, but he stood tall, refusing to show weakness. Colton stumbled out last, half collapsing into the snow, clutching his bleeding shoulder. You can't leave me, these guys will kill me, he shouted, slipping on ice. Alexander didn't even look at him. Keep your voice down. They're coming. As if summoned by his words, the hatch behind them buckled from the inside. Someone slammed into it. Hard, Tessa screamed. They got through already? Franklin's eyes sharpened. Reed, car? Alexander pointed across the courtyard. A black SUV sat idling beside a garage, exhaust puffing into the air. A bulky driver stepped out, military posture, expression carved from stone. Evelyn's breath caught. Who is that? Someone I trust, Alexander said. He'll get you out. Before they could move, the hatch finally burst open. Claire's limp body hit the snow first. Evelyn sobbed, collapsing to her knees. Claire's eyes were open, vacant, her face turned toward the sky that would never warm her again. Behind her, 3 armed men crawled out, and the man leading them stepped into the snow with a calmness that made the night colder. The villain. The man who wanted Evelyn's bloodline. His voice slid through the courtyard like a blade dipped in silk. Running again, Evelyn? Alexander stepped in front of her. You won't touch her. The man smiled. You Reed boys were always so dramatic. Your father said the same thing. Franklin raised his gun with trembling strength. Shut your mouth. Still alive, Ward? The man chuckled. You were harder to kill than your daughter. A sound tore from Franklin, a wounded, furious growl. He fired. The shot missed by inches, hitting the brick wall behind the villain. The men around him lifted their weapons. Evelyn screamed, Stop, please, my baby. The villain tilted his head. Yes, your baby, the last key your mother hid. Evelyn's breath froze. What key? But he wasn't talking to her anymore. He looked at Alexander, at Franklin, at Colton, bleeding in the snow. You all thought she had nothing, he said softly. But she carries the most valuable code my network ever lost. In her DNA? In her child's DNA. Franklin's face drained. Evelyn, don't listen. He's correct, the man cut in. Your mother encoded encrypted intel into a medical sequence. A sequence passed through bloodlines. Alexander's jaw clenched. You're insane. Am I? The man murmured. Then why has half the world been chasing this woman since the day she was born? Evelyn staggered back. Reality shifted under her feet. Then, A gunshot cracked through the courtyard. Snow exploded beside her. The villain raised his weapon. Time to finish what I started. And Evelyn realized this wasn't just survival anymore. This was war for a truth buried in her own blood. A gunshot split the winter air, sending a spray of snow into the sky like shattered diamonds. Evelyn Brooks fell backward, instinctively shielding her baby. Alexander Reed pulled her behind a utility van, just as another bullet ricocheted off the metal frame. Franklin Ward returned fire, staggering from blood loss but fierce as ever. The villain stepped forward through the snow, his coat sweeping behind him, his men fanning out like wolves closing in. "You can't protect her forever," he said calmly. "Her very blood is the prize." Alexander's voice was ice. "You'll never get close enough to find out." But Evelyn was barely hearing them, because another contraction ripped through her sharp, deep, frightening. Her breath stuttered. She clutched her belly. "Alexander," she gasped. "The baby, my stomach, it's tightening again." Alexander knelt beside her instantly. "Look at me. Stay awake. You're not delivering in a parking lot." Franklin fired again, hitting one of the villain's men in the leg. The man dropped with a howl, but the villain didn't flinch. "You know, Ward," the man said, "you trained some of the world's best soldiers. I always wondered how your granddaughter would turn out." Franklin snarled and shot again. This bullet grazed the villain's coat close, but not enough. Colton, still clutching his bleeding shoulder, crawled across the snow. "You want her DNA?" he shouted at the villain. "Take it. Just let me go." Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. "Colton, you monster." Tessa kicked him. Hard. "He sold you out again." The villain smirked. "Pathetic. I don't need him." His eyes returned to Evelyn. "All I need is you." Alexander rose, positioning himself between them. His posture changed, shoulders squared, feet anchored. Like a man ready to die where he stood if it meant saving her. "You'll go through me first," he said. "That was the plan," the villain replied. He raised his gun. Franklin shouted, "Down!" Gunfire erupted again. Bullets tore through the snow, punching holes in vans, dumpsters, the pavement. Franklin ducked behind a loading crate, firing back with precision but less strength. Tessa dragged Colton to cover. Evelyn shielded her baby beneath her coat, her vision blurring with cold, fear, and pain. Alexander looked at her, a flicker of worry cracking his calm exterior. "Evelyn, listen to me. No matter what happens, you keep moving. You protect your child." She shook her head violently. "Not without you." He swallowed hard. "You won't have a choice if—" Before he could finish, the villain barked. "Take them." Two of his men broke into a sprint, weaving through snow and debris. Franklin fired, took one down. Alexander rushed forward, tackled the second attacker, slamming him into the snow. The gun slid across the ground. Alexander kicked it away. But the villain had already advanced. He aimed at Evelyn. Time slowed. Evelyn screamed. Alexander lunged. Franklin fired. A shot echoed. For a moment, no one could tell who had been hit. Then Alexander collapsed across the snow, gripping his side, blood seeping through his fingers. "No!" Evelyn cried. The villain's smile widened. One reed down, one ward to go. Franklin roared and charged at him with the strength of a man who refused to die before saving his family. They collided in a brutal clash, fists, elbows, raw survival. But the villain wasn't fighting to win the brawl. He was fighting to get around Franklin. Toward Evelyn. She stumbled backward, clutching her baby, breath ragged, contractions stabbing harder. Alexander reached for her weakly. "Evelyn, run." She couldn't run. She couldn't even stand straight. The villain broke free of Franklin's hold. He took aim at Evelyn. And from the shadows of the courtyard, a second gun fired. Someone else had arrived. The shot cracked through the courtyard like lightning splitting the night. The villain jerked sideways, a bloom of red spreading across his coat. He staggered but didn't fall, snarling as he spun toward the source of the gunfire. Evelyn Brooks whipped her head toward the shadows, breath freezing in her throat. A figure stepped forward through the drifting snow. Tall. Steady. Unshaken by the chaos around him. Alexander's driver. But not just a driver. He removed his black cap, revealing sharp features Evelyn recognized from news articles, corporate interviews, tech conferences she'd watched on an old iPhone during her lunch breaks. It wasn't a driver. It was Jonathan Reed, Alexander Reed's older brother, former military intelligence officer and co-founder of Reed Tech before vanishing from the public eye years earlier. Evelyn gasped. Jonathan? Alexander, still bleeding on the ground, managed a weak smile. Told you, someone was watching over you. Jonathan strode forward with the confidence of a man who'd walked into gunfire before. Ward, keep pressure on him. He's not down yet. Franklin Ward, bleeding heavily, nodded and re-aimed at the villain with renewed determination. The villain wiped blood from his lip, eyes blazing. You Reed brothers just don't know when to die. Jonathan didn't blink. And you don't know when to stop talking. He fired again. The villain ducked behind a utility cart, the bullet sparking off metal. His remaining men opened fire. Jonathan dove behind a snow-covered generator, returning shots with frightening accuracy. Evelyn, trembling, crouched beside Alexander. You're hurt, you're losing too much blood. His fingers brushed her cheek. Hey, I'm not dying tonight. I promised your grandfather I wouldn't. Her heart twisted. Don't talk like that. He smiled faintly. Then stop looking at me like you're saying goodbye. Another contraction tore through her. She cried out, nearly collapsing, the baby's weight pulling her downward. Tessa caught her under the arms. She's in active labor, Alexander. We need to get her out of here. I know, he groaned, forcing himself upright despite the pain. Jonathan, cover us. Jonathan responded with a sharp whistle, a tactical code. His shots became rhythmic, controlled, pushing the enemy back and buying them precious seconds. Franklin shouted, Evelyn, over here behind the plow truck. But Evelyn could barely move. Pain knifed through her body, her breath shallow, her vision dimming. The villain rose again, unbothered by his bleeding wound, eyes locked on Evelyn with terrifying clarity. You're running out of time, he called, stepping from cover with renewed fury. Give me the child, Evelyn. That code does not belong to you. Evelyn's voice broke. It's just DNA. What code? What did my mother do? The villain laughed a cold, hollow sound. Your mother cracked a military encryption seed, a genetic cipher impossible to replicate. She embedded the final numeric sequence into her own DNA so no one could steal it, and now, his eyes gleamed. That code lives in you. And your children. Evelyn's stomach turned. So this was never about me. It was always about you. Jonathan fired again, forcing the villain to retreat. Evelyn, move. Alexander hauled her to her feet. Franklin, limping, covered their flank. Tessa dragged Colton by his collar, despite his wounded protests. The villain, despite bleeding heavily, lifted his gun toward Evelyn again. Rage twisting his face, determined to finish what he'd started 20 years ago. But before he could pull the trigger, a roaring engine split through the courtyard. Headlights blasted across the snow. A black SUV, not Jonathan's, crashed through a side gate, skidding to a stop between Evelyn and the villain. The passenger door flew open. A woman jumped out, long coat whipping in the wind, eyes fierce with purpose. Evelyn froze. It was her mother, alive. Snow whirled violently as the SUV skidded sideways, tires carving deep scars into the courtyard ice. The passenger door flew open, and the woman stepped out, her long coat billowing, breath crystallizing in the freezing air. Evelyn Brooks stared, unable to breathe. The woman's face was older, worn by time and grief, but unmistakable. The eyes soft hazel. The cheekbone scar Evelyn remembered from a childhood photo. The trembling, protective stance. Mom? Evelyn whispered, voice cracking. The woman's gaze snapped to her, and something inside Evelyn shattered and healed at the same time. My baby, the woman breathed, choked with emotion. My sweet girl Evelyn. Time froze. Even the villain faltered, shock breaking through his rage. Impossible. You're dead. Her mother, alive, trembling, furious, stepped in front of Evelyn with a fierceness that matched Franklin Ward's iron will. No, she said. You only thought you killed me. Franklin staggered, eyes wide. Lydia? She spared him a brief glance, a look heavy with 20 years of pain, but her focus snapped back to the villain who'd hunted her family. I survived the fire, Lydia said coldly. I disappeared because I knew you wouldn't stop. I went into deep cover. I hid so you couldn't use Evelyn as leverage. The villain's jaw clenched. You were supposed to die. The code should have died with you. Too bad, Lydia spat. Your mistake was underestimating a mother. Alexander, still wounded, whispered to Evelyn. This changes everything. But Evelyn barely heard him. Another contraction ripped through her, forcing her to her knees. Lydia rushed to her side. "Sweetheart, are you in labor?" I think so," Evelyn gasped. "It's happening right now, I can't stop it." The villain seized the moment, lifting his gun again. "No one leaves this courtyard alive except the girl." Jonathan Reed fired at him. Franklin fired too. Bullets sparked against metal. Steam burst from ruptured pipes. Snow churned as the villain dodged left, weaving behind the plow truck. "This ends now," he shouted. He charged Lydia. Franklin threw himself between them. The villain's shoulder collided with Franklin's weakened chest, sending the older man crashing into the snow. "Grandpa!" Evelyn screamed. But Franklin forced himself onto his elbows, refusing to fall fully. "Finish him, Lydia, before he gets to Evelyn." The villain twisted, striking Lydia across the jaw. She fell but rolled instantly, snatching a dropped gun from the snow. He kicked it from her hand. It skittered across the ice toward Evelyn. Alexander crawled toward it, fighting pain, but the villain stomped on his wounded side. Alexander collapsed with a grunt. The villain grabbed Evelyn by the coat, hauling her upward. Her baby shrieked. Evelyn cried out as her stomach tightened again, another brutal contraction. "Let go of her!" Lydia screamed, scrambling to her feet. "You don't get to give orders," the villain snarled. "You already failed once." And then, he pressed a blade to Evelyn's neck. Everyone froze. Lydia, Franklin, Jonathan, Alexander. The villain hissed into Evelyn's ear. "Your life for the code. One cut, and it's over." Evelyn trembled violently, but something shifted inside her. A fire, a clarity, a refusal to let her children inherit fear. Her eyes sharpened. "You want my blood?" Evelyn whispered. "Then choke on it." She slammed her head backward, striking his nose with a sickening crunch. He staggered. Lydia dove for the fallen gun. Jonathan fired. Franklin roared. Alexander forced himself upright. The villain spun, lifting his blade again. And Evelyn, bleeding and barely standing, grabbed his wrist with both hands and screamed, "Get away from my family." The courtyard erupted in a final, violent clash. For one suspended heartbeat, the courtyard held its breath. Snow fell in slow spirals under the security lights, catching in Evelyn Brooks's hair as she clung to the villain's wrist. All fear burned away, replaced by pure, maternal fury. Then everything exploded at once. The villain twisted violently, throwing Evelyn off balance. She fell backward, hitting the snow with a cry as another contraction ripped through her. Her mother, Lydia, dove forward with the stolen gun, but the villain kicked her with brutal force, sending her sliding across the ice. Jonathan Reed fired again, one shot, then another, but the villain ducked behind the plow truck, using its metal bulk as a shield. Alexander Reed dragged himself upright, grimacing through the pain. "Evelyn, don't move." "She's in labor," Tessa screamed, trying to help Evelyn sit up. "We need an ambulance." "No ambulances," Franklin growled, fighting to stay focused through his blood loss. "They'll trace the call." The villain sprang from behind the plow truck, knife glinting. He lunged at Alexander with surgical precision. Alexander blocked the first swing, but the second sliced across his palm. Blood splattered onto the snow. "Is that all the Reed family can offer?" the villain taunted. Jonathan took aim again, but the villain grabbed Alexander, using him as a human shield. Evelyn screamed, "Alexander!" He gritted his teeth. "Don't shoot." The villain hissed in his ear. "You shouldn't have interfered." Then he hurled Alexander aside like a broken weapon. Alexander hit the ground hard, gasping. The villain turned toward Evelyn. Everything inside her froze. "Your mother failed," he said. "Your grandfather failed. But you won't get the chance." Lydia crawled forward, desperate. "Take me, not her." The villain didn't even look at her. "You're already useless. The code passed on when you gave birth." Evelyn's baby whimpered, sensing the terror around them. His eyes shifted to the child. "No," Evelyn breathed. "Not her. Please not." Jonathan appeared behind the villain, but the villain spun and slashed him across the arm. Jonathan dropped to one knee, clutching the wound. Franklin tried to rise but collapsed, blood staining the snow. The villain walked toward Evelyn, step by deliberate step, knife raised. She tried to stand, but another contraction tore through her, stealing her strength. Tears streamed down her face, not from pain, but from the fear of losing her child. The villain crouched. "Goodbye, Evelyn." A gun cocked, but not Franklin's. Not Jonathan's, not Lydia's. Colton Hayes, shaking, bleeding, terrified, stood with a discarded pistol clutched in both hands. His voice cracked. "Get away from my wife." The villain's eyes narrowed. "You're not part of this." "I never wanted any of this," Colton cried. I just wanted the money. I didn't want anyone dead." He fired. A wild shot. It missed. The villain charged him, slicing open his arm. Colton screamed and dropped the gun. But his interference bought 2 precious seconds. Seconds Alexander needed. He launched himself across the snow, slamming into the villain from behind with every ounce of strength left in his body. They rolled violently, fists flying, knife flashing. Jonathan rushed to assist. Lydia grabbed Evelyn, pulling her away from the chaos. Tessa shielded the baby with her coat. The fight was brutal, 2 against 1, but the villain fought like a soldier with nothing left to lose. He kicked Jonathan backward, he elbowed Alexander in the jaw. He grabbed the fallen knife, and charged Evelyn again. She screamed. The villain raised the blade, but a shot rang out. The villain's body jerked. A bloom of red spread across his chest. He staggered, shock flickering through his eyes. Behind him, standing with trembling hands, holding Franklin's backup gun, was Lydia. Her voice was steel. "Stay away from my daughter." The villain collapsed into the snow. But Evelyn's victory lasted only 1 second. Before her knees buckled, her vision blurred, and she whispered, "Something's wrong. The baby." And she collapsed into Alexander's arms as the world spun into white. Snow struck Evelyn's face in sharp, icy flakes as the world pitched sideways. Her body collapsed into Alexander Reed's arms, her breath shallow, her skin slick with cold sweat. Pain radiated from her abdomen in violent waves, deeper, sharper, unmistakable. "She's hemorrhaging," Tessa cried, pressing her hand against Evelyn's belly. "She's going into full labor way too early." Alexander lowered Evelyn carefully into the snow, his hands trembling. "Evelyn, hey, stay with me. Look at me." But her eyes fluttered, rolling back. She clutched his coat weakly. "Alexander, it hurts. I'm scared." "I know," he whispered, brushing the hair from her face. "I'm right here. I'm not leaving." Lydia dropped to her knees beside them. "We need to get her inside somewhere, warm, somewhere safe. She can't deliver here." Franklin, still gripping his side and barely standing, looked toward the street. "Jonathan, the SUV, get it here." Jonathan sprinted through the snow toward the second vehicle, the one Lydia had arrived in. The engine roared to life. Colton, pale and shaking, stumbled forward. I can help carry her." Alexander's glare cut through him like a blade. "Touch her, and you won't leave this courtyard." Colton froze, defeated. Evelyn screamed a raw, agonized sound that pierced the night. Blood bloomed beneath her in the snow. Tessa's voice cracked. "Her placenta might be tearing. She's losing too much blood." Lydia grabbed Evelyn's face gently. "Sweetheart, listen to me. You're strong. You're stronger than anyone here. You hold on for me, okay?" Evelyn tried to nod, but the pain overtook her. She convulsed, clutching her baby tighter against her chest. Alexander's hands shook as he tore off his coat and wrapped it around her. "We're getting you to a hospital." "No hospitals," Franklin snarled, then coughed blood into the snow. "The network has people inside. They'll take her the moment she arrives." Jonathan pulled up beside them in the SUV. "We'll take her to the safe facility, the one Dad built underground for emergency extractions." Alexander lifted Evelyn carefully, cradling her and her newborn to be against his chest. She screamed again, nails digging into his neck. His heart cracked at the sound. "I'm here," he whispered urgently. "Look at me, Evelyn. Keep your eyes open." Her voice trembled. "Don't let them take my baby, please." "They won't," Alexander vowed. "I swear it." As they moved toward the SUV, the courtyard behind them erupted in shouts. The villain's surviving men, enraged, leaderless, frantic, burst from the shadows, firing wildly. "Go!" Franklin roared. Jonathan and Alexander shielded Evelyn with their own bodies as bullets tore through the snow. Lydia ducked behind the SUV, screaming, "Get her inside!" Tessa climbed in first, pulling Evelyn from Alexander's arms as gently as possible. Evelyn's head lolled, eyes rolling back. Alexander jumped in beside her, gripping her hand. "Stay with me, Evelyn. Stay with me. Don't close your eyes." Franklin fired the last of his ammunition at the advancing men, buying precious seconds. Jonathan yanked him into the front seat as Lydia slammed the door shut. "Drive!" Lydia screamed. Jonathan floored the gas. The SUV shot forward, smashing through the broken side gate. Snow sprayed behind them as gunfire followed, bullets pinging off metal. Inside, Alexander pressed his forehead to Evelyn's, voice breaking. "You're not dying, not tonight, not like this." Evelyn gasped a wet, choking sound as blood soaked through her clothes. Alexander," she whispered. Yes, I'm here. Don't let my baby be alone." "She won't be, I promise." Her eyes fluttered, then closed. "Evelyn!" he shouted, but the SUV kept racing through the night, carrying a woman fighting for her life, and a child who wasn't supposed to be born yet. The SUV tore through the frozen Brooklyn streets, sirens echoing faintly in the distance, not police, not help, just the city breathing around them, as Evelyn Brooks drifted between consciousness and the cold pool of darkness. Alexander Reed cradled her in the back seat, his hands slick with her blood, his voice trembling despite every effort to stay calm. "Evelyn, don't do this. Stay with me, look at me." Her eyelids fluttered. A faint gasp slipped from her lips. "The baby, she's coming." Tessa checked Evelyn's pulse with shaking fingers. "Her blood pressure is dropping fast. We need the facility now." Jonathan swerved sharply, accelerating. 2 minutes out. But Evelyn didn't have 2 minutes. Another contraction hit so intense her entire body arched off the seat. She let out a scream that pierced Alexander's chest like a blade. Lydia squeezed her daughter's hand, tears streaming. "Breathe, sweetheart. You're stronger than this pain." Evelyn shook her head weakly. "I'm scared, Mom." "I know." Lydia kissed her forehead. "But you are not alone anymore." Snow streaked across the windows as the SUV sped toward an old warehouse. It looked abandoned, but beneath it lay a hidden medical bunker built by the Reed family decades ago for emergencies just like this one. Jonathan slammed through the garage door and skidded inside. The moment the SUV stopped, Alexander scooped Evelyn into his arms and sprinted toward the elevator platform waiting at the center of the floor. Tessa hit the control panel. The platform descended rapidly into bright, sterile light. A doctor and 2 nurses rushed forward. "Lay her down, we need to assess the hemorrhaging." Alexander didn't want to release her. But he did. He placed Evelyn gently on the surgical bed, whispering, "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Her fingers brushed his cheek, blood staining his skin. "You cared for me when you didn't have to." His throat tightened. "I didn't do it because I had to. I did it because—" But Evelyn's body seized again in agony, cutting him off. Doctors moved swiftly, working to stabilize her. "She's dilated. We need to deliver the baby now." "No," Alexander whispered, panicked. "Her body isn't ready." "She has no choice," the doctor replied. "If we delay, we lose both of them." Lydia clutched Franklin as he staggered beside her. The old soldier leaned heavily on the railing, watching the scene with tears he refused to let fall. "It should have been me," Franklin choked. "Not her, not my granddaughter." Lydia held his hand. "She's going to make it. She has to." Another scream tore through the room. Evelyn reached for Alexander blindly. He rushed to her side, letting her grip his hand with desperate strength. "You're doing so well," he whispered, brushing tears from her face. "Just a little more. I'm here. I'm right here." Minutes felt like hours. Then, a baby's cry broke the air, high-pitched, alive. Evelyn collapsed back, sobbing with relief. "Is she?" The doctor smiled. "She's perfect." A nurse held up the tiny newborn, wrapped in white cloth. Alexander let out a shaky, broken breath. Evelyn reached for her child with trembling arms. But then the monitors beeped in alarm. Evelyn's eyes rolled back. Blood pulsed from her abdomen. "She's crashing," the doctor shouted. Alexander's world collapsed. "No, Evelyn, no." But the doctor worked quickly, sealing the bleeding, injecting stabilizers, massaging her heart. And then, a steady beep. Slow, then stronger. Evelyn's eyes opened faintly. Alexander fell to his knees beside her, crying openly now. "You scared the hell out of me." She touched his face weakly. "We made it, didn't we?" "Yes," he whispered. "You did." Franklin saluted her from across the room, tears shining. Lydia kissed Evelyn's forehead, whispering thanks into her hair. Alexander leaned close. I love you, he said softly, and if you'll let me, I'll spend my life proving it. Evelyn smiled through exhaustion. Then help me raise our daughters. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside, a family long shattered was finally whole again. All right, my wonderful friends, the story has finally come to a close. And if you are still here, still reading, still breathing in the last emotion of this journey, then something in this story touched your heart in a way only truth can. Because behind all the chaos, the danger, the heartbreak, lies a message we all need at some point in life. No matter how dark the night gets, you are never truly broken. As the Stoics often remind us, the obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote that every hardship contains a seed of strength, and Evelyn's journey reminds us that healing comes not from avoiding pain but from walking through it with courage. Life may test you, people may betray you, but you are allowed to rise again, to rebuild, to choose love that protects instead of wounds. And if tonight something in this story made you feel seen, understood, or less alone, then stay with us. Like, share, and subscribe not just for the story, but for the community we're building here. A place where pain becomes strength, and every ending becomes a new beginning. Thank you for being here. You matter more than you know.